Have you ever felt like running away? You need to do some inner work and you just feel if you could separate from where you are, you could do that inner work, that you could transform yourself. I have definitely felt like running away. But the reality is, no short-term runaway is going to completely transform you. Transformation takes time and it takes a plan. Let's say you go to a retreat. You want to find yourself, do a transformation, and you go to a retreat. And you learn a little bit about yourself. You're able to relax, but then you come back to real life. Real life has stress and problems regardless of where you are in your life. So although a retreat is nice, a runaway to transform, I want to talk about the mindset of transformation. The mindset of transformation is a journey. It is a lifetime journey of transformation. I'm Christy Bundakumara. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner by profession, but in my life experience, I have been able to transform my mental health and really teach others. I've been through unimaginable grief and trauma. I've lost 3 children and my husband over the course of 20 years, not all at the same time. And in that, it was multiple mini transformations. And there were definitely times where I felt like running away. But it wasn't when you would think. It wasn't like right after a child died or right after a significant trauma. During those times, I'm in fight or flight, and I'm usually a fighter. The flight, the wanting to run away, usually happens in the calm of the storm, when there's nothing to fight for. Overall, you feel like you're losing in life. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt like you're going from fighting to feel like you're losing that fight? My son had a very rare neurodegenerative condition, and I spent 10 years in that fight. And there were times where I just wanted to run away. And that's the fight or flight, wanting to run away. Sometimes it's a vacation. But how many times do you come home from a vacation and you need a vacation from your vacation? That it didn't actually transform you. It didn't give you the rest and relaxation that you had hoped for. So what do you actually need to transform? You know, we talk about the title of how do you disappear and transform? You can go on retreats and short things. I have a grief intensive that I teach. You can go and learn more. I've personally gone to retreats, and I often think of them as like an Ebenezer. I do learn something. I calm down a little bit and I rest to come back into the fight. I didn't actually transform. And so if you're going to do this disappear to transform, make sure you leave that disappearance with a plan. Because it's not just about what you learn when you run away and disappear. It is about how you can incorporate that into real life. Real life has problems. And running away from your problems typically does not help. It will oftentimes make things worse. And so transformation is like a lifetime journey, a mindset. And we're going to talk about some of the things I want you to look for in your plan for transformation. So there's 3 main buckets. So if you were to really want to go on a retreat, or maybe you want to go to a conference to learn something that you are going to incorporate, that's just a piece of the puzzle. If you go to that retreat, if you go to that conference, it's a piece of the puzzle. You want to actually create a plan that, one, includes your overall health. So that is your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, and your spiritual health. Many retreats are specific to one of those. It's a spiritual retreat, or it's a mental rejuvenation retreat. But you want to make sure that your plan incorporates all 4 of those things. Second is you want to make sure that it is self-care focused. There's definitely something to discipline and doing, but In a transformation comes from within, and the discipline and the actions are later in the process. So you want to make sure there's a strong self-care component to your plan. And self-care is not just massages and getting your nails done. It's knowing who you are and what fills your cup, what actually rejuvenates you. So for me, I learned that travel, the actual physical movement of travel helps me. I also learned what I do and don't like. Like so many people say, oh, exercise, exercise, exercise. If you were just become a runner, your physical and mental health would all be packaged in this nice little bow. And that is true for many people who love running. I don't love running. And that doesn't fill my cup. It drains my cup. And so it took me until I was turning 50 to go through this journey of what actually fills my cup. So you can't do self-care if you don't know who you are. So that self-care is about knowing what fills your cup. And I would also include that it includes self-improvement, your spiritual self, self-movement, like what do you love to do? And then lastly, the third bucket of your transformation plan is, are you learning something? Be a lifelong learner. Be a learner. Learn new things about yourself. Learn new things about techniques that might work. Constantly be learning. And you see how these things can't just be done in a let's run away, disappear, and transform ourselves. But you can, if you go in with a plan with intention, you could use one of these retreats or conferences or a vacation, or I currently have a grief intensive where you can come. And if you have the plan and intention to come out with a plan for your transformation that you will do over the course of your lifetime in small bite-sized pieces, that could really transform your life. So a little bit about the grief intensive. I told you that I've lost 3 children and my husband over the course of 20 years. And during that time, I learned lots of things. One is what we teach with the Mentally Strong method of being able to separate things and work through them differently and have a clear personal vision to move forward. Also, the 5 selves, things that we need to know and understand to really be transforming and working on ourselves and growing and moving forward. Also, all of the things that I did in my grief documentary. So the grief intensive is all that I've learned in the 20 years of going through these things, but uniquely personal so that you can create a plan for your growth, for your disappearance and transformation. Unfortunately, it's not magic, but we can do it. I've got a couple questions that came from my listeners specifically around the grief intensive. First question is, what is the difference between your grief intensive and like a grief retreat? I think grief retreats are amazing. Many people that I know who have lost a child have gone to a grief retreat and felt connected, felt like they could do it. They could work through this grief. So it's not an either or, but it's very different. A grief retreat is a lot of relaxation in between feeling that pain. The grief intensive is more about feeling the pain, learning how to feel the pain, learning techniques and modalities to work through the pain. It is intensive by nature to learn everything that you need to know to make that plan to move forward. And I'll just add to that question, what's the difference between that and in the grief intensive and a yoga retreat? Yoga is a both physical and spiritual practice. It could incorporate many of the self-care things that I talk about. Self-improvement, self-movement, moving trauma and grief out of the body. But yoga's not for everyone, and it's not comprehensive to really creating a plan. Yoga is a great tool, great modality. What about the difference between a psychedelic retreat? I've personally gone on a psychedelic retreat. I was hoping for something magical. Many people talk about a pretty significant shift in themselves. They can do a lot of inner work in a short period of time. So again, psychedelic work might be part of your plan, but I can tell you it's never the comprehensive. All right, question number 2. If I don't have the time or money to attend the grief intensive or a specific retreat or conference, what can I do? I have a lot of free content on YouTube. It's just weeding through a lot of the information is there. I would say 30% of the information is free on YouTube. I have some courses, finding online courses, reading books, doing whatever you can to learn that who you are, what fills your cup, how to organize what's going on in your brain, how to create a plan for transformation. Because disappearing and transforming does not have to be a physical disappearing. It could just be emotionally stepping back a little bit and working on yourself and coming up with that plan to move forward. Last question. Can I come to the grief intensive if I have not lost a child? The answer is yes. It is 10% grief specific. So there's 10 plus categories, and we all get enmeshed in the different categories. And we likely all have grief, because grief is not just losing a child, which is obviously traumatic grief, but we've all lost people in our lives. We've lost relationships. We've lost ourself. So I would say about 10% is going to be kind of, honing in on that grief, but it is not all grief. It is being able to separate those things and learn how to make a plan for that transformation. I believe that you can turn your pain into purpose if you just take the time to develop a plan for transformation. Watch my series on the 5 selves. The first video just kind of talks generally about the 5 selves, and then each video after that goes deep into what does it mean to develop those 5 selves.